At 18, she was forced to marry a cold billionaire. But his wedding gift silenced the whole country. She's a teen pulled from a small life into a world of marble and cameras. He's a cold, untouchable CEO who bought silence with a signature. Overnight, she owns the nation's biggest media empire. This isn't a fairy tale, it's a trap wrapped in a headline. She must learn boardroom rules, dodge a brutal smear campaign, and survive whispers that her past is more tangled with his family than anyone admits. He protects her with power. He also hides secrets that could ruin them both. Is she a pawn in his empire, or the woman who will force him to choose love over everything he built? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The morning sun filtered through the dusty windows of the converted parlor, casting warm strips of light across Emma Carter's workspace. Her arms moved in practiced motions as she swept hair clippings from the weathered hardwood floor, the bristles making a soft scratching sound that had become as familiar as breathing. At 18, Emma had transformed this cramped room in their Brooklyn brownstone into a cozy salon station, complete with a single styling chair and a collection of professional products arranged on vintage shelves. The scent of lavender shampoo caught her nose, making her pause mid-sweep. Mum's favorite. The memory hit her like a gentle wave, her mother's hands working through a client's hair, humming softly, the same lavender scent filling their home. These old bones aren't what they used to be. Mrs. Whittaker sighed from the styling chair, drawing Emma back to the present. The elderly woman had been coming here since before Emma could walk. "Nothing a fresh color can't fix," Emma replied, setting aside the broom to check her client's foils. Her fingers moved with gentle precision, each touch confident despite her youth. "How's that arthritis treating you?" "Better now that I'm here. You've got healing hands, just like your mother did." Emma smiled, though her chest tightened at the comparison. She'd learned everything from watching her mom work in this very room. Now the space was hers, along with the responsibility of keeping it running. Between clients, she settled at the small desk tucked in the corner, examining her ledger with furrowed brows. The numbers were tight, but they always made it work. She'd rather eat ramen for a week than take a loan from anyone. Independence meant everything. The door creaked open around noon, bringing with it the heavy footsteps of her Uncle Frank. Emma looked up, surprised to see him home so early from what he'd called an important meeting. Behind him stood a man in an expensive suit, Thomas Hale, she'd later learn, whose polished appearance seemed at odds with their modest surroundings. "Emma, we need to talk," Frank said, his voice carrying the weight of something serious. "Mrs. Whittaker, I'm sorry, but could you—" The elderly woman gathered her things, sensing the tension. "Of course, dear. Emma, we'll finish up tomorrow." Once alone, they moved to the living room. Emma perched on the edge of their worn sofa, while Frank paced, running his hands through his graying hair. The stranger, Hale, stood by the window, his posture rigid and professional. "There's no easy way to say this," Frank began, his words carefully chosen. "I've just come from a meeting regarding a situation, a complicated legal matter involving several local families and businesses." "What kind of situation?" Emma's spine straightened, instinct telling her something was very wrong. "A potential scandal, political in nature. The details aren't important, but the implications would be devastating for many people we know." Frank finally sat, pulling out a thick envelope. "I was presented with a solution, a settlement of sorts." "What does this have to do with me?" Hale cleared his throat. "Miss Carter, the agreement requires a particular type of arrangement, a marriage provision, to be specific." The word marriage hit Emma like ice water. Excuse me? The terms are quite clear. Hale continued, his tone maintaining its professional edge. To ensure the matter remains private, a binding agreement has been arranged between yourself and Alexander Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Holdings. Emma shot to her feet. This is insane. You can't be serious. Emma, please. Frank pleaded. I've already signed the preliminary agreement. It was the only way to protect everyone involved. You what? She snatched the papers he held out, scanning the legal jargon until she found it. Section 7.3. The party identified as Emma Carter, hereby referred to as the bride, agrees to enter into a legal marriage contract with Alexander Blackwell. Her hands shook as she read further. Section 9.1. Any breach of these terms will result in immediate dissolution of all protective measures currently in place for affected parties. This is illegal, she snapped, throwing the papers down. I'm 18. You can't just trade me like some sort of commodity. Actually, Miss Carter, Hale interjected, the agreement is quite legal. Your guardian has acting power in matters of family security, and you are of legal age to marry. A knock at the door made them all turn. 2 men in dark suits stood in the doorway, their earpieces and stance screaming, "Security!" It's time, Miss Carter, one said. We're here to escort you to a secure location while the transfer is finalized. Transfer? Emma's laugh was hollow. I'm a person, not a bank account. She looked to Frank, seeing the defeat in his eyes. I'm sorry, Emma, it's done. Her hands clenched into fists as she was led to a waiting black sedan. Through the window, she watched her home shrink away, her mind already racing with plans to contact Zoe Lynn, her best friend, would know what to do, how to fight this. The car's interior was cool and sterile, nothing like the warm chaos of her salon. Emma glanced at her watch, 6:18 p.m., as Brooklyn's familiar streets began to fade into unknown territory. The sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and orange, but all she could see was the cage closing in around her. The black sedan glided to a stop in front of a towering Fifth Avenue building, its glass facade reflecting the last traces of sunset. Emma stepped out, the transition from Brooklyn's familiar chaos to Manhattan's polished wealth hitting her senses hard. Gone were the comforting aromas of her salon's shampoos and dyes, replaced by the sterile scent of marble and money. A woman in her 50s, dressed in an impeccable charcoal suit, waited in the lobby. Miss Carter, I'm Margaret Cole, head of household operations for Mr. Blackwell. Please, follow me. The elevator ride was silent, save for the soft hum of machinery. Emma's worn sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, making her increasingly aware of her mismatched presence in this world of wealth. The silence felt oppressive after the constant symphony of Brooklyn street life. Here, the only sounds were the whisper of climate control and the barely perceptible hum of security cameras tracking their movement. Margaret led her through a vast penthouse that seemed to occupy the entire floor. Your temporary accommodations, she announced, opening double doors to reveal a suite larger than Emma's entire brownstone apartment. You'll find appropriate attire in the closet. Mr. Blackwell expects you dressed accordingly for this evening's meeting. The closet revealed a curated selection. A tailored black blazer that probably cost more than 3 months of her salon's revenue, a cream silk blouse with pearl buttons, and a pair of neutral Louboutin pumps that made Emma's feet ache just looking at them. Your phone, please. Margaret extended her hand. Standard security protocol requires a thorough scan for any unauthorized monitoring software or tracking devices. Emma clutched her phone tighter. I need to make one call first. I'm afraid that's not possible until the scan is complete. It's for your protection. With trembling fingers, Emma tried to speed dial Zoe, but the call failed to connect before Margaret deftly plucked the device from her hands. The scanning process takes approximately 1 hour. In the meantime, Jenkins and Morris will be stationed outside your door for security purposes." Emma paced the luxurious prison, watching the city lights bloom across Manhattan through floor-to-ceiling windows. At precisely 11:00 p.m., a knock announced Alexander Blackwell's arrival. He entered like he owned the room, which, she supposed, he did. At 38, he carried authority in every movement, his tailored suit a second skin of power. His features were sharp, aristocratic, and his eyes assessed her with the same clinical interest one might give a business proposition. "Miss Carter." His voice was low, controlled, each word measured. "I trust you understand why we're here. To discuss how you're forcing me into marriage through legal coercion?" The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "To review the terms of our arrangement. Garrison?" A silver-haired man Emma hadn't noticed stepped forward, opening a leather portfolio. "The marital agreement requires your signature tonight to activate the protective measures outlined in the preliminary document." Emma crossed her arms. "I'm not signing anything." "That's unfortunate," Alex said, "but ultimately irrelevant. The preliminary agreement, signed by your guardian, is already binding. Section 12.4 clearly states, upon execution by the designated legal guardian during period of duress, all subsequent provisions become immediately binding upon the named party, regardless of future consent." Garrison held out the document, indicating a line of text that matched Alex's recitation word for word. Emma's stomach lurched. "This is insane!" she protested. "You can't just—" "I can, and I have." Alex interrupted, his tone remaining maddeningly even. "The marriage will proceed according to schedule. Your signature tonight simply determines whether certain parties receive their promised protections immediately or face delays that could prove problematic." The threat was clear, though his expression never changed. Emma thought of the families Frank had mentioned, the businesses that could be destroyed. "You're a monster," she whispered. "I'm a businessman, Miss Carter. One who solves problems efficiently." He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "The agreement will be here when you're ready to sign. I suggest you do so before midnight." The door clicked shut behind him, followed by the distinct sound of a lock engaging. Emma rushed to try the handle. Locked, as she'd suspected. Through the peephole, she could see Jenkins and Morris taking up their positions. Her phone was still with Margaret. The windows were sealed, and every possible exit was monitored by security cameras or guards. Emma sat on the edge of the too-soft bed, her mind racing through escape scenarios while the midnight deadline approached. Each plan she conceived crashed against the reality of her situation. She was trapped, not just by physical barriers, but by the web of legal obligations and threats that Alex Blackwell had woven around her. The city sprawled before her, a glittering maze of lights and shadows. Somewhere out there, Zoe was probably wondering why she couldn't reach her. Somewhere, Frank was probably convincing himself he'd done the right thing. And here she was, surrounded by luxury but stripped of choice, watching the minutes tick toward midnight in a prison of marble and silk. The agreement sat on the desk, its presence as heavy as a block of ice. Emma stared at it, remembering the families whose lives hung in the balance, wondering how many others Blackwell had trapped in similar ways. The clock on the wall showed 11:58 p.m., each tick echoing in the tomb-quiet room. The 43rd floor of Blackwell Holdings stretched out like a museum of power, all glass, steel, and calculated intimidation. Emma's heels clicked against marble as she followed Margaret through the maze of corporate corridors, each step echoing her heartbeat. The boardroom could have seated 30, though only a dozen chairs surrounded the gleaming conference table. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a vertigo-inducing view of Manhattan, making Emma feel like she was floating above reality. Everything smelled of leather and lemon polish. "Miss Carter?" A woman in a charcoal suit approached, extending her hand. I'm Patricia Winters, Head of Legal Affairs. We'll begin shortly." Through the glass walls, Emma spotted a small camera crew setting up in the hallway. Their equipment bags bore network logos. The vultures were already circling. Alex sat at the head of the table, his presence drawing every eye in the room. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than Emma's entire salon setup, his cufflinks catching the morning light. 6 lawyers flanked him, their laptops open and ready. "The marriage settlement and protective transfer agreement," Patricia announced, placing a thick document before Emma. "Please initial each page and sign where indicated." Emma's hand trembled as she took the offered pen. The paper felt expensive, heavyweight, important. Each page contained carefully worded clauses that bound her future to this man, this place, this life she never chose. Section 4.2 outlines the protective measures for the affected parties. Patricia continued. Section 7.9 details the terms of the marital arrangement. Alex signed with practiced efficiency, his Mont Blanc fountain pen flowing across the signature line without hesitation. His expression remained unreadable, as if he were simply concluding another business deal. Emma's signature looked childish next to his, a reminder of their vast differences. The moment she finished, Patricia whisked the papers away for notarization, while photographers snapped photos through the glass walls. "The press release goes out at noon," one of the lawyers mentioned. "We'll need you both available for controlled statements later this week." At 10:45, Emma found herself alone with Alex in his private elevator, ascending to the penthouse level. The silence felt thick enough to touch. They passed floor after floor, numbers climbing higher than Emma had ever lived or worked. "I didn't choose this spectacle," Alex said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. It was the first personal thing he'd said to her. Before Emma could respond, the mask slipped back into place, and he was once again the untouchable CEO. The penthouse level housed a private salon that would have made Emma's Brooklyn setup look like a child's playhouse. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across white marble floors. 3 stylists waited with professional smiles, armed with high-end products Emma recognized from magazine ads. "We'll start with a deep conditioning treatment," the lead stylist, Antoine, declared. "Then style for the ceremony. Classic elegance is key, nothing too avant-garde." Emma sat rigid in the leather chair, watching her reflection as they began their work. Every brushstroke felt like an erasure of who she was. They washed her hair with something that smelled like orchids instead of her usual lavender shampoo. The makeup artist approached with brushes that cost more than her monthly rent. "Perhaps a softer shade for the lips," Antoine suggested, mixing colors on his palette. "More Park Avenue, less Brooklyn." Emma's hands clenched in her lap. They were repackaging her, turning her into someone who could stand beside Alexander Blackwell without making his shareholders nervous. The mascara felt heavy on her lashes, the foundation like a mask. "Angle your chin up, please," the makeup artist requested. "We'll need to contour here and here." Through the window, Emma watched the city she knew, her city, sprawl out below. Somewhere down there, her tiny salon chair sat empty. Her regular clients would be wondering where she was. Mrs. Whittaker probably needed her roots touched up, and old Mr. Chen would be missing their weekly gossip session while she trimmed his hair. The stylists worked efficiently, transforming her step by step. Her natural waves were tamed into elegant curves, her minimal makeup replaced by something more sophisticated. Even her hands were being refined with a manicure that cost more than she made in a week. "The dress will arrive at 4, Margaret announced from the doorway. "The ceremony begins at 6 sharp. We'll need her ready by 5:30 for preliminary photos." Emma met her own eyes in the mirror, barely recognizing the polished woman emerging under the stylist's hands. Her mother had taught her to do hair because it was honest work. You helped people feel good about themselves. This felt like the opposite, like being erased and redrawn according to someone else's specifications. A touch more highlighter, Antoine murmured, brush poised. We want her to glow for the cameras. The clock on the wall read 2:30. In 3.5 hours, she would walk down an aisle toward a man who saw her as a contract to be fulfilled. Guests she'd never met would watch her pledge herself to a stranger. And somewhere in Brooklyn, her tiny salon would remain dark, its owner transformed into someone else entirely. The makeup brush swept across her cheekbone again, adding another layer to her new facade. In the mirror, Emma watched herself disappear beneath the polish and shine, wondering how much of herself would survive this metamorphosis. The Manhattan venue gleamed like polished ice. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over the gathered elite. Senators, CEOs, media moguls, all assembled to witness what the news anchors were calling the merger of the decade. Emma sat in a private room, her wedding dress a masterpiece of silk and lace that felt more like armor than celebration. Through the door, she could hear the live broadcast, reporters discussing the mysterious Brooklyn bride with barely concealed speculation. 2 minutes, Margaret announced, checking her tablet. The network's ready. At precisely 6:30, the ceremony began. Emma walked down the aisle on trembling legs, past faces she recognized from magazine covers and news broadcasts. Alex stood at the front, perfect in his tuxedo, his expression controlled and distant. The officiant, a distinguished judge, kept the ceremony modernly brief. No mentions of love or cherishing, just carefully worded promises about partnership and mutual respect. Cameras clicked softly, their flashes reflecting off the crystal decorations. Do you, Alexander James Blackwell, take Emma Marie Carter? I do. His voice carried clearly, measured and precise. Emma's I do came out barely above a whisper. She felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, heard the commentators whispering into their microphones about her youth, her background, the speed of the arrangement. Their first kiss as husband and wife was brief and formal, a business transaction sealed with the barest brush of lips. The applause seemed to echo off the marble floors, hollow and rehearsed. The reception began at 8 p.m. in the grand ballroom. Emma sat at the head table, picking at food she couldn't taste while political analysts dissected every moment on live television. Screens around the room showed various networks' coverage, their chyrons spinning theories about the hasty ceremony. A stunning development in the Blackwell dynasty. Sources suggest regulatory pressures behind union. Teen bride's background raises questions. At 9:15, Alex rose smoothly from his seat. The room fell silent as he approached the microphone, his movements deliberate and controlled. Camera operators adjusted their angles, sensing something significant. Tonight marks more than a marriage. He began, his voice carrying that same measured tone he used in board meetings. It represents responsibility, legacy, and the future of American media. Emma felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't in any brief she'd been given. Therefore, Alex continued, I am announcing the immediate transfer of controlling interest in Sentinel Media Group to Emma Carter Blackwell. The room erupted in gasps. Emma's fingers gripped the edge of the table as Alex produced a document, signing it with ceremonial flourish before the cameras. Flashbulbs exploded like lightning. The complete transfer of America's largest independent media conglomerate. A pundit breathed into his microphone. Headlines appeared in real time on the screens. Breaking, Blackwell transfers media empire to new bride. Teen bride gains control of 4.2B Media Group. Sentinel, shock power shift rocks media world. Emma's face appeared on every screen, her shocked expression frozen in high definition. Her phone buzzed in her clutch, A sympathetic server had helped her smuggle it in. With shaking fingers, she texted Zoe. "He just gave me his company, on live TV. Help!" The ballroom dissolved into controlled chaos. Reporters huddled in corners, frantically calling their newsrooms. Business analysts pulled up stock projections on tablets. Politicians whispered behind hands, recalculating alliances. An unprecedented move in modern media. Questions about experience and capability. Stock futures already responding. Security smoothly materialized around Emma, guiding her away from the commotion. They led her to a quiet sitting room, its thick walls muffling the explosion of speculation behind them. Through the window, she could see satellite trucks arriving, their dishes turning toward the sky to beam this story across the nation. Her phone kept buzzing. Zoe, "OMG, what is happening?" Zoe, "You're on every channel." Zoe, "CNN calling you America's newest media mogul." The wedding cake remained uncut on its stand, forgotten as reporters filmed live segments in the garden. Inside the sitting room, Emma could hear the muted sound of her own name being discussed on multiple networks, her life being dissected by strangers who'd never set foot in her Brooklyn salon. Margaret appeared with a tablet showing real-time coverage. Unprecedented power shift in media landscape. Questions about regulatory oversight. Wall Street braces for Monday opening. The after-party fizzled naturally as guests rushed to their offices, eager to get ahead of the story. By midnight, the venue had emptied except for cleaning crews and security details. Emma sat in the sitting room, still in her wedding dress, watching her face appear on screen after screen while the nation tried to make sense of what had just happened. Her new husband remained in the main hall, giving carefully worded statements to selected press. His voice carried faintly through the walls, measured and controlled as always, while he reshaped the narrative of American media with each precise answer. The night stretched toward morning. Somewhere in Brooklyn, her small salon would open tomorrow without her. But here, in this quiet room with its thick carpet and ancient oil paintings, Emma Carter Blackwell watched the world try to understand how a teenager with rough hands and a cosmetology license had just become one of the most powerful figures in American media. Emma woke to the insistent buzz of notifications. Her phone, returned after the wedding, lit up with hundreds of alerts, messages, and news updates. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of the guest suite, highlighting headlines that scrolled across the flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. Sentinel transfer, inside the legal strategy. Wall Street reacts to media empire shift. Who is? Emma Carter Blackwell? At precisely 9 a.m., a knock at the door introduced Claire Donovan and Eric Hayes, Sentinel's lead corporate counsel. Claire, sharp-featured with perfectly pressed clothing, carried a leather portfolio thick with documents. Eric, younger with wireless glasses, clutched a tablet displaying real-time market data. "Mrs. Carter Blackwell," Claire began, her tone clipped and professional. "We need to brief you on the legal mechanics of last night's transfer." Emma sat at the suite's conference table, still in silk pajamas provided by the household staff. "Please, just Emma." "The transfer is irrevocable for 60 business days," Eric explained, spreading documents across the table. "During this period, only a formal board vote can reverse the decision." Claire pointed to specific clauses. This was executed as a protective measure. The company faced immediate regulatory threats, a combined FCC and Department of Justice investigation that could have destabilized Sentinel's independence. "Additionally," Eric added, pulling up market charts, "we detected signs of a hostile tender offer from Rivera Media Group. They were positioning to seize control if Sentinel remained in Mr. Blackwell's direct holdings." Emma's head spun as they detailed the corporate warfare she'd been thrust into. Charts showed stock movements, regulatory filings, and competitor positions. Her signature now controlled billions in assets, thousands of jobs, and the flow of information to millions of Americans. Margaret appeared with coffee and breakfast pastries, moving silently through the room as the lawyers continued their briefing. Emma barely touched the food, trying to absorb the cascade of information. "These are the immediate items requiring your attention," Claire said, sliding over a stack of papers. "Board meeting preparations, press statements, regulatory disclosures." At 10:30 a.m., Alex entered without knocking. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her salon's yearly revenue, his presence immediately commanding the room. The lawyers gathered their materials and departed with quick nods. "I trust you've been briefed," he said, taking a seat across from her. His voice was cool, clinical, the same tone he'd used during the ceremony. "Why me?" Emma asked, meeting his gaze. "Why give a teenager control of your empire? The transfer creates a legal firewall," he explained, folding his hands on the table. "Your ownership shields Sentinel from both regulatory action and hostile acquisition attempts. Your age and background actually strengthen the protection. It makes the transfer appear more clearly driven by personal rather than business factors." Emma felt her jaw tighten. "So I'm just a convenient shield?" "You're now the owner of America's largest independent media organization," he corrected. "The board meeting is at 2 p.m. You'll need to attend as the controlling shareholder." "And if I refuse?" "The agreement you signed includes mandatory participation in corporate governance." He stood, straightening his cuffs. "Margaret will ensure you're properly dressed and briefed." "Wait," Emma called as he reached the door. "Was this about protecting Sentinel or manipulating me into compliance?" Alex paused, his hand on the doorknob. His shoulders tensed slightly, the first crack she'd seen in his composure. But when he spoke, his voice remained measured and distant. "The legal necessities have been explained. The rest is irrelevant." After he left, Emma sat alone with the weight of her new reality. Her phone showed missed calls from Zoe, Mrs. Whitaker, other salon clients. Their normal world seemed impossibly far from this suite with its leather folders and market projections. Margaret returned with a rack of designer clothes. "For the board meeting," she explained, selecting a navy blazer and pencil skirt. "Conservative but commanding." Emma touched the expensive fabric, remembering the texture of salon towels and the smell of hair dye. "I don't know how to run a media empire." "You'll have advisors," Margaret said, laying out accessories. "The immediate priority is projecting confidence to the board." The morning news continued its analysis. Financial experts debated the strategy. Political commentators questioned the timing. Social media exploded with memes about the teen media queen. Emma's phone buzzed with another text from Zoe. "OMG girl, you're trending #1 worldwide." A team arrived to do her hair and makeup. As they worked, more lawyers filtered in with documents requiring immediate attention. Press releases needed approval. Regulatory filings awaited signatures. Board materials required review. "The markets open in 10 minutes, Eric announced, returning with his tablet. Trading in Sentinel stock was temporarily halted, but it resumes at the bell. Emma watched the countdown clock on CNBC, knowing each tick brought her closer to facing Sentinel's board. Her salon appointment book, usually full for weeks, sat forgotten in Brooklyn. Instead, she had a different kind of schedule now, one filled with shareholder meetings and press conferences. "Your first statement to the financial press is scheduled for tomorrow," Claire informed her, adding another folder to the growing pile. "We'll need to project stability and strategic continuity." Margaret adjusted Emma's blazer collar. "Remember, posture is power. These board members need to see strength." The morning stretched on, a blur of briefings and preparations. Every TV channel discussed her. Every newspaper analyzed the transfer. Every financial site debated Sentinel's future under its unexpected new owner. And through it all, Emma couldn't shake Alex's non-answer about his true motives. The legal explanation made sense, but something in his momentary tension, that slight crack in his armor, suggested deeper currents beneath the corporate strategy. The Sentinel boardroom stretched before Emma like a gladiatorial arena. 14 faces watched her entrance, their expressions ranging from skepticism to barely concealed hostility. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a vertigo-inducing view of Manhattan, while a massive mahogany table dominated the space. Alex sat at the head, his presence a steady anchor in the charged atmosphere. Emma took her assigned seat, technically the power position as majority owner, though it felt anything but powerful. "Let's address the elephant in the room." Grant Mercer spoke first, his voice carrying the practiced charm of a seasoned media personality. "We have an 18-year-old salon worker controlling America's largest independent media organization. This is unprecedented and, frankly, concerning." Emma's hands tightened under the table, but she kept her face neutral. The smell of expensive cologne and leather chairs reminded her how far she was from her familiar world of shampoo and scissors. "I move for an immediate legal audit," said Patricia Winters, an elegant woman in her 60s who'd been with Sentinel for decades. "We need to verify the transfer's legitimacy." "Seconded," came multiple voices. Claire Donovan, head legal counsel, cleared her throat. "The transfer documentation is ironclad. Ms. Carter's ownership is legally binding for a minimum of 60 business days." "Then let's discuss a voluntary step-down," Mercer suggested smoothly. "For the good of the company, of course." Emma leaned forward, surprising herself with her steady voice. "I have questions before we discuss anything like that." The board members exchanged glances. Alex's expression remained unreadable, but his attention sharpened. "First," Emma continued, "what's the current breakdown of Sentinel's editorial coverage between hard news and opinion content?" The question caught them off guard. The chief editorial director, James Morton, consulted his tablet. "Approximately 60-40 split, favoring news. And what percentage of our investigative journalism focuses on corporate corruption versus political scandal?" More rustling of papers. "About 70-30 toward political," Morton admitted. "So we prioritize political drama over corporate accountability," Emma noted. "Interesting choice for a media organization owned by corporate interests." A murmur rippled through the room. Alex's eyebrow lifted slightly. "What's your point, Miss Carter?" Mercer asked, his charm hardening. "My point is that before anyone discusses my stepping down, I'd like to understand what I'd be stepping down from. Next question, what percentage of our board members have direct ties to companies Sentinel should be investigating?" The silence was deafening. "Miss Carter," Patricia Winters interjected, "you're questioning decades of media experience." "No," Emma cut in. "I'm questioning conflicts of interest. And I have more questions. What's our fact-checking protocol? How many stories get killed by advertiser pressure? Why did our coverage of the tech sector drop? 40% after taking on certain sponsors?" She saw Alex's fingers tap once on the table, a tiny tell of approval. "These are complex industry matters," Mercer began. "They're actually simple ethical matters," Emma countered. "And since I now own this company, they're my matters." She turned to Claire. "I want to propose an interim policy while you research the transfer's implications. A non-partisan editorial charter that guarantees independence from both corporate and political pressure." "That would require significant restructuring," Morton protested. "Good," Emma said. "Draft it. Include provisions for protecting journalists from retaliation when investigating board members' interests." The room erupted in overlapping objections. Alex raised his hand slightly. and silence fell. "The owner has made a reasonable request," he said, his voice quiet but carrying. "Legal will draft the charter. We'll review it next session." "This is absurd," Mercer snapped. "She's barely old enough to vote." "Yet old enough to own Sentinel," Emma replied. "Unless you'd prefer I exercise that ownership to launch an immediate investigation into board members' external business dealings." She saw a flicker of something, almost like satisfaction, cross Alex's face. The next 2 hours dissolved into technical discussions, policy debates, and thinly veiled power plays. Emma absorbed what she could, asked for clarification when needed, and refused to be rushed into decisions. By 4:45, Claire had outlined the charter's basic framework. The board, though clearly unhappy, couldn't find legal grounds to block it. A public statement was drafted for the morning news cycle, carefully worded to project stability, while acknowledging the transition period. As the meeting wrapped up, Emma felt drained but oddly accomplished. She'd survived her first corporate battlefield, even scored some points. But the real test would be following through on her demands for transparency. The board members filed out, Mercer lingering to whisper something to Alex that made his jaw tighten imperceptibly. Emma gathered her notes, her head swimming with terms like editorial oversight and stakeholder interests. "The car is waiting." Margaret appeared at her elbow. "Dinner will be served at 8:30. Emma nodded, suddenly aware of how long it had been since breakfast. She stood, smoothing her blazer, a gesture that felt foreign in its corporate formality. Alex remained seated, reviewing documents. He didn't look up as she left, but she felt his attention follow her to the door. The ride back to the penthouse was silent. Manhattan's evening lights blurred past the tinted windows, while her phone buzzed with media requests and messages from home. Mrs. Whittaker needed to reschedule her regular appointment. The salon's utilities needed paying. Normal life continued in Brooklyn, oblivious to boardroom battles and corporate intrigue. At 8:30, Emma sat alone at a dining table meant for 12. The chef presented an elaborate meal she barely tasted. Somewhere in the building, Alex was probably working late, maintaining the careful distance he'd established. The silence pressed in, broken only by the soft clink of silver on fine china. She pushed her food around, thinking of morning rushes at the salon, of easy laughter with clients, of the simple pleasure of creating beauty with her hands. Now her hands held something far more complex, the power to shape national narratives, to expose corruption, to make real change. If they'd let her keep it long enough to try. At 9 p.m., Margaret appeared with a message. "Mr. Blackwell requests your presence in his study." Emma followed her through the penthouse's west wing, each step echoing on marble. The study door opened to reveal dark wood paneling and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Alex stood by a window, backlit by city lights, his tie loosened slightly. "We need to discuss the fallout," he said, gesturing to a leather chair. Papers covered his desk, legal briefs, PR statements, market analyses. "More dictates from on high?" Emma asked, remaining standing. "Advisory reports. The board's concerns aren't baseless." He handed her a document. "Our stock dropped 12% on the transfer news." "Because you handed control to an unknown teenager?" "Because I moved our most valuable asset out of direct ownership during a hostile climate." His voice stayed measured. The regulatory pressure was building. Grant Mercer's consortium was positioning for a takeover. "So you used me as a human shield." "I used legal mechanisms to protect the company's independence." He poured 2 glasses of water, offered her one. "Your board performance today was unexpected." "Disappointed I wasn't just a pretty puppet?" His jaw tightened. "You showed insight. But editorial independence without market awareness is suicide. Market awareness without editorial integrity is worse." Emma stepped closer. You could have explained your plan before ambushing me at my own wedding. There wasn't time, and your genuine surprise helped sell the narrative. My genuine surprise. Heat flooded her face. I'm not your chess piece, Alex. No. His eyes met hers. You're my wife. The word hung between them, charged with unspoken meaning. A wife you acquired through coercion. She said quietly. A partner I hope will help save something worth saving. He moved closer, his presence magnetic. Sentinel's independence matters. Its voice matters. And what about my voice? My independence? You demonstrated both quite effectively today. Was that admiration in his tone? Emma felt the pull between them. Anger and attraction tangled impossibly. You're still trying to control everything. I'm trying to protect. Stop protecting me! She stepped into his space. I don't need protection. I need honesty. His breathing changed subtly. You want honesty? Yes. I didn't expect you. His voice dropped, lower. Your strength, your clarity of purpose, it complicates things. Complicates your perfect plan? Complicates everything. His hand rose to her face, hesitating. May I? The question surprised her. Such careful restraint from a man who commanded empires. She nodded. His fingers traced her cheek, feather-light. Emma's pulse raced. This doesn't change anything. She whispered. I know. His other hand settled at her waist, waiting for permission. She grabbed his tie, pulling him closer. I'm still angry. I know that too. His lips brushed hers, questioning. Emma answered by deepening the kiss, heat blooming between them. But when his grip tightened, she pulled back. Wait. He stopped immediately, though she felt him trembling slightly. I need to know this is my choice, she said, not another corporate merger. Tell me what you want. His control was evident in every careful movement. Equal ground. My terms. Name them. She studied him, this powerful man waiting on her word. Kiss me again. But remember, I can stop this anytime. Understood. His voice was rough. This time when they came together, the heat built slowly. His hand stayed where she guided them. She set the pace, exploring the contrast between his structured exterior and the passion he contained. When clothing started to fall away, each move was negotiated in whispers and touches. Emma discovered the power in making this controlled man wait for permission, in hearing his breath catch when she allowed more. After, they lay tangled in the study's leather sofa, the city glittering beyond the windows. A comfortable quiet settled between them. I do regret some things, Alex said softly, surprising her. The timing, the pressure you were under. A pause. Not explaining sooner. Emma touched his face, feeling the smallest tremor in his jaw. Keep talking like that, and I might start thinking you're human. His expression flickered, almost a smile, before smoothing back to careful reserve. He checked his watch. It's late. You should rest. Tomorrow will be challenging. The moment of vulnerability passed, but its echo remained as they dressed in silence. At the study door, he touched her shoulder lightly. Thank you. For what? Showing me another way to negotiate. She left him there, padding back through the quiet penthouse. Her borrowed suite felt less alien now, though sleep proved elusive. Somewhere above, she knew Alex was probably still working, armored once again in suits and spreadsheets. But she'd seen beneath that armor now, felt the human pulse beneath corporate steel. It changed nothing about their arrangement, and everything about how she saw him. The clock read 1 a.m. when she finally drifted off, her dreams a tangle of boardrooms and kisses, power and surrender, anger and attraction. Dawn waited just hours away, bringing new battles and complications. But for now, in the dark, She let herself remember the moment his control had cracked, when power had shifted between them like a tide, when they'd found something honest in all this orchestrated chaos. Thursday morning arrived with a stack of briefing papers and Margaret's gentle knock. "Mrs. Blackwell, your car arrives in 30 minutes for the network interview." Emma winced at the name. "Just Emma, please." The morning show lights felt harsh, the host's smile sharper. "Mrs. Blackwell, many are calling this a publicity stunt. Your response?" "I prefer focusing on Sentinel's journalism," Emma said, remembering her prep. "Like our upcoming feature on small business owners navigating the gig economy." "But you were a salon owner yourself, correct? Hardly qualified." "I understand real people's stories," Emma cut in. "And real journalism serves real people. That's what Sentinel stands for." The host blinked, thrown off script. In the green room after, she caught approving glances from junior producers. By afternoon, she sat with Claire Donovan, drowning in media law primers. "Libel requires actual malice," Claire explained, "but verification protocols protect us." "Show me everything," Emma said. "I need to understand this." Friday brought newsroom tours. The energy was electric. Phones ringing, reporters hunched over keyboards, editors shouting across desks. Emma absorbed it all, asking questions about fact-checking processes and source protection. "We're thinking of running this exposé on delivery app exploitation," said Sarah Chen, features editor. "But advertising might balk." "Run it," Emma said. "Include salon owners, home cleaners, everyone trying to make it. Show the human cost." "Grant Mercer won't like that," Sarah warned. "His tech investments, let him complain. People deserve to know." That evening, reviewing the first draft, she felt Alex's presence before she saw him. He studied the article over her shoulder. "Bold choice," he said quietly. "The right choice." He nodded once, approval flickering in his eyes, before leaving her to work. Saturday's schedule was brutal. Morning briefings on circulation numbers, afternoon strategy sessions, then the evening's charity gala. All crystal and careful conversations. "So you're the one who's stirring things up," came a cool voice. Eleanor Blackwell, Alex's sister, elegant in black. "That workers' rights piece is causing quite a buzz. Good journalism should start conversations." Emma replied. "Interesting perspective." Eleanor sipped her champagne. "Alex usually prefers quieter approaches." "I'm not Alex." "No." Eleanor studied her. "You're certainly not." The exchange left Emma unsettled. She retreated to a quiet corner, watching Alex work the room. He moved with practiced ease, but she noticed now how his smile never quite reached his eyes. Through it all, she was learning. Learning the power structures, the pressure points, the way words could shape reality. The editorial meeting where she'd pushed for the gig worker story had been a turning point. She'd seen respect replace skepticism in senior editors' eyes. Thursday's interview had taught her media dynamics. When the host tried painting her as naive, she'd countered, "You know what's naive? Thinking journalism is just about profit margins. It's about truth, about showing people their world clearly." Friday's newsroom immersion revealed the daily battles for integrity. She'd sat in on editorial meetings, watched fact-checkers verify sources, felt the pulse of news happening. "Mrs. Carter Blackwell," a junior reporter had approached hesitantly. "That salon owner angle you suggested, it really strengthened the story." "Emma," she'd corrected gently. "And thank you. Sometimes the best stories are the ones we live." Now, as Saturday night wound down, she found herself in Alex's office, heels kicked off, reviewing Monday's editorial calendar. "You're adapting quickly," he observed, loosening his tie. "I had no choice." She stretched, muscles aching from 3 days of intensity. But I'm starting to see why you fight so hard for this place. And why did you approve that gig economy piece? You knew it would anger powerful interests. Because it's true? Because it matters? She met his gaze. Because some things are worth fighting for. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Her phone showed 11:12 p.m. 3 days of crash course media education had left her exhausted but strangely energized. She understood more now, about power, about influence, about the delicate dance between truth and consequences. The city sparkled beyond the windows, a galaxy of lights. Somewhere out there, her salon stood quiet, her old life paused. But here, in this tower of influence and information, she was building something new. Get some rest, Alex said quietly. Next week will be challenging. Emma gathered her papers, mind already turning to Monday's battles. She'd learned more than media operations these 3 days. She'd learned she could hold her own in this world of power and privilege, that her perspective mattered, that sometimes the best defense was simple truth. From the corner of her eye, she caught Alex watching her, that same unreadable expression, but perhaps with something new. Respect? Interest? She was learning to read him too, slowly decoding the subtle shifts in his carefully controlled facade. The gala's last guests were departing below, their voices floating up through the atrium. Eleanor's words echoed in her mind. "You're certainly not Alex." No, she wasn't. And maybe that's exactly what Sentinel needed, a different voice, a new perspective, someone who remembered what it meant to live in the real world. She gathered the last of her notes, hiding a yawn. 3 days of intensive learning left her mind buzzing with possibilities. The gig economy piece would run Monday. Grant Mercer would likely retaliate. The board would grumble. But she was ready. She understood the game now. And more importantly, she understood why it mattered. Real journalism, real stories, real impact. Her borrowed office still felt strange, but less so than 3 days ago. The papers spread across her desk told stories of power and truth, of voices fighting to be heard. She was one of those voices now, whether she'd chosen it or not. The clock struck 11, its chime echoing through the empty offices. Another day done, another step into this new world. She was tired, yes, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind that came from fighting for something that mattered. Emma's phone buzzed incessantly as notifications flooded in. She scrolled through the barrage of tweets and posts, each one more vicious than the last. Anonymous accounts circulated grainy photos from her salon days, questioning her credentials and suggesting darker motives behind the Sentinel transfer. Breaking teen bride's past exposed, what really happened at Brooklyn Beauty? One viral thread proclaimed, accompanied by deliberately miscontextualized photos of her working late nights at the salon. Her hands trembled as she read further. Someone had dug up her mother's death certificate, spinning wild theories about insurance fraud. They'd even tracked down disgruntled former clients, amplifying minor complaints into scandalous accusations. The Sentinel Board's emergency video call at 10 a.m. had been brutal. Board member Harrison Wells spoke first, his voice clipped with barely contained panic. "Mrs. Carter Blackwell, given these allegations, perhaps a temporary step back would be prudent. Just until things settle," another board member added smoothly. "For the company's sake." Alex sat silent through most of it, his jaw tight. When he finally spoke, it was with measured precision. "Emma Carter Blackwell remains Sentinel's legal owner, pending any formal inquiry. That's our only public statement on this matter." By 11:30, Emma's hands shook so badly she could barely dial Zoe's number. "Em?" Her friend's familiar voice brought instant tears. "I've seen the posts. It's everywhere." "They're making me sound like some kind of criminal," Emma whispered, pacing her suite. "They found photos of Mom's funeral, Zoe. They're using that against me." "Listen to me." Zoe's voice turned fierce. "You've done nothing wrong. This Grant Mercer guy, he's terrified because you actually care about real journalism. The board wants me to step down." "Of course they do. They want a puppet, not someone with actual principles." Emma pressed her forehead against the cool window glass, watching Sunday traffic crawl below. "I don't know if I can fight this, Zoe." "Since when do you back down from bullies? Remember Jennifer Chang in 10th grade? Despite everything, Emma smiled. She did deserve that haircut. Exactly. And these corporate vultures deserve you making them uncomfortable. The afternoon dragged on with more crisis meetings. PR teams drafted statements, lawyers reviewed options. Through it all, Alex remained oddly distant, handling things through intermediaries. At 7 p.m., an unexpected knock interrupted Emma's attempt at dinner. Eleanor Blackwell stood in the doorway, elegant in casual Sunday wear that probably cost more than Emma's old salon. "May I come in?" She didn't wait for an answer. "We need to talk." Emma gestured to the sitting area, noting how Eleanor's gaze swept the room, cataloguing details. "Grant Mercer," Eleanor said, settling onto the sofa, "is using an old playbook, one he learned from our father." Emma sat straighter. "What do you mean?" 20 years ago, when our mother tried to expose certain improprieties at Sentinel, similar smears appeared. Anonymous sources, manufactured scandals. Eleanor's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her knee. She was forced out of the company, out of our lives eventually. Alex never mentions anything real. Eleanor's smile held no warmth. "But you need to understand the game you're in. This isn't just about Sentinel's ownership or editorial direction. This is about power. Family power." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I'm going to show you something that might help you understand why my brother really put Sentinel in your name." Eleanor stood. "Meet me at the Blackwell Foundation offices. Come alone." "Alex won't like that." "Alex doesn't like most things. Doesn't mean they're wrong." Eleanor paused at the door. "One more thing. Check the ownership records of those accounts spreading the worst rumors. Follow the shell companies. You might find interesting connections to our father's old associates." After Eleanor left, Emma spent hours digging through online records. Around midnight, her laptop screen blurred with fatigue, but she couldn't sleep. The smear campaign continued trending, each notification a fresh wound. She paced the penthouse, mind racing. Grant Mercer hadn't created this attack alone. The coordination was too perfect, the timing too precise. Eleanor's hints about family history nagged at her. At 1:30 a.m., Emma stood at the window, watching the city's lights flicker like stars. Her reflection showed dark circles under her eyes, but her jaw was set with determination. They wanted to bury her in scandal? Fine, but she wouldn't go quietly. Her phone buzzed again, another viral post questioning her character. She didn't open it. Instead, she began making notes, mapping connections between shell companies, tracking ownership patterns. If they wanted a fight, she'd give them one. The night stretched on, but sleep wouldn't come. Tomorrow's meeting with Eleanor loomed, promising answers but threatening new complications. The Sentinel board's suggestion to step down echoed in her mind, mixing with Eleanor's warnings about family power plays. In the glass, her reflection hardened. They thought she'd break under pressure, retreat to her small salon and simple life. They didn't understand. She'd fought for everything she had before. She could fight now. The city hummed below, a constant reminder of the stakes. Sentinel's reach touched millions of lives. Its editorial integrity mattered far beyond corporate boardrooms or family feuds. Grant Mercer's smear campaign wasn't just attacking her, it was threatening everything Sentinel could be under honest leadership. She wouldn't let that happen, not when she finally understood what she was fighting for. Her phone showed 1:30 a.m. In 7.5 hours, she'd meet Eleanor and maybe learn the truth behind Alex's motives. Until then, she'd keep digging, keep planning, keep fighting. Because that's what you did when truth mattered. You fought for it, no matter the cost. Morning sunlight filtered through the penthouse's glass walls as Emma waited on the garden terrace. The city sprawled below, a maze of steel and concrete that felt both foreign and familiar now. At precisely 10 a.m., Eleanor's heels clicked against the marble flooring. "Thank you for meeting me," Eleanor said, settling into a wrought-iron chair. She placed a weathered leather portfolio on the table between them. "What's this about?" Emma asked, eyeing the folder. Eleanor's fingers traced the portfolio's edge. "Before I show you, understand that this information, it changes things. Not just for you, but for everyone involved." She opened the portfolio and removed a photograph, yellowed with age. Emma leaned forward, her breath catching. A young woman with her mother's smile stood between two men, one she recognized as Alex and Eleanor's father from portraits in the building lobby. "That's my mother," Emma whispered, touching the photo's edge. "But how? This was taken at the Blackwell Summer House, 1992. Your mother, Catherine, was engaged to our father." Emma's hand jerked back as if burned. "That's impossible. My mother never—" "The engagement lasted 3 months. It ended when our father chose political expedience over love." Eleanor's voice carried old pain. "There was a scandal brewing. Nothing your mother did, but rather our father's business dealings. He needed a strategic marriage to secure certain alliances." She produced a bundle of letters, tied with faded blue ribbon. "Your mother wrote these to him. After, when she learned she was pregnant, she wrote one final letter." Emma's hands shook as she untied the ribbon. Her mother's familiar handwriting filled the pages. Passionate at first, then increasingly desperate. The final letter was dated just before Emma's birth. "Does this mean—" Emma couldn't finish the question. "DNA tests were never done," Eleanor said carefully. "Our father buried the situation with money and influence. Your mother refused any contact after that, raised you alone with her brother's help. Does Alex know? He suspected. It's why he chose you for this arrangement, not just for the legal shield, but because you might have a legitimate claim to Sentinel regardless. If you are our half-sister, Eleanor, let the implications hang." Emma stood, pacing the terrace. "This is why the marriage had to be me specifically. Why Alex transferred Sentinel into my name. He's using possible bloodline legitimacy to strengthen the legal protection." "Yes, but there's more." Eleanor produced newspaper clippings. "Grant Mercer worked for our father back then. He knows this history. If he exposes it, the scandal would be devastating. Questions about legitimate heirs, corporate succession." Emma's mind raced. "But why tell me now?" "Because you deserve to know what you're fighting for. And because Grant's smear campaign isn't just about Sentinel, it's about buried history that could destroy multiple families." At 3 p.m., Emma found Alex in his office, the letters spread before him. "Were you ever going to tell me?" she demanded. He looked up, his expression guarded but strained. "What would it have changed? Everything. You used me, used possible family ties to protect your company. I used legal means to protect Sentinel's independence." His voice was tight. The possibility of biological connection only strengthened the shield. "My mother." Emma's voice cracked. "Did you know her?" Something flickered in Alex's eyes. Pain, perhaps regret. But he simply said, "She was kind, strong-willed, like you." Emma spent the evening alone in her suite, letters scattered across her bed. Her mother's words painted a picture of young love, betrayal, and fierce determination to protect her child from the Blackwell world of power plays and manipulation. One passage caught her eye. "I choose to leave this world of wealth and influence, not because I fear it, but because I want my child to know true worth isn't measured in dollar signs and stock prices." Emma touched the words, feeling closer to her mother than she had in years. The clock showed 10 p.m., but she kept reading, piecing together a history that explained so much: her uncle's bitterness toward wealth, her mother's emphasis on independence. More letters revealed the depth of the relationship, the plans made, the dreams shattered. Her mother had been promised not just marriage, but a role in shaping Sentinel's future, using media influence for positive change. By midnight, Emma had constructed a timeline: her mother's whirlwind romance, the engagement announcement, the sudden corporate crisis that prompted her mother's replacement with a more suitable bride. The final letters showed her mother's transformation from heartbroken fiancée to determined single mother. At 1 a.m., Emma found a small note tucked inside an envelope, dated just before her mother's death. "My dearest Emma, if you ever learn this history, remember, true power lies not in what others give you, but in what you choose to do with what you have." The city lights blurred as Emma read through the collection again. By 2 a.m., she had memorized key passages, dates, names, ammunition for whatever battle lay ahead. Whether she was truly a Blackwell by blood seemed less important than honoring her mother's principles and protecting Sentinel's integrity. The letters painted a complex portrait of the Blackwell family: their power, their flaws, their capacity for both cruelty and redemption. Emma understood now why Alex had chosen this path, even if his methods angered her. He'd created a legal shield that could withstand scrutiny because it was anchored in possible truth. As Monday turned to Tuesday, Emma carefully returned the letters to their ribbon binding. The past couldn't be changed, but it could inform the future. Her mother had walked away from the Blackwell empire to protect her child's integrity. Now that child held the power to reshape that empire's future. The irony wasn't lost on Emma as she finally prepared for sleep. Her mother had fled this world of power and influence, only for fate to draw her daughter back in, not as a victim of manipulation, but as someone with the authority to effect real change. Tuesday night's newsroom hummed with fluorescent energy. Emma sat at a desk near the night editor, watching reporters track breaking stories across multiple screens. The clock showed 11:15 p.m. "This is where the real work happens," Sarah Chen, the night editor, explained. "No PR spin, just raw news gathering." Emma absorbed everything: fact-checkers confirming sources, copy editors debating word choices, the constant feed of incoming stories. She'd insisted on experiencing this side of Sentinel, away from boardrooms and legal documents. "What about this?" Emma pointed to a developing story about healthcare workers' overtime disputes. "It affects thousands of families." Sarah nodded. "Good instinct, but corporate usually pushes for business angles." "Push back. These are human stories that matter." Emma's voice carried conviction. Several reporters glanced up, surprised by her directness. At 2 a.m., Emma pitched her idea for an investigative series: Working America Uncovered, stories about everyday people fighting systemic challenges. The night team's enthusiasm was palpable. "This could really distinguish Sentinel," Sarah said. "But Grant Mercer's allies on the board." "Let me handle the board," Emma replied, though uncertainty gnawed at her. She noticed Alex's absence. No calls, no messages all night. His distance felt deliberate, clinical. Wednesday morning arrived with fresh chaos. Emma prepared for her live appearance on Morning Beat, a national talk show. Her phone buzzed with urgent texts from the board, something about a congressional inquiry. The studio lights felt hot at 9 a.m. The host, Patricia Walsh, didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Mrs. Blackwell, Concerns have been raised about Sentinel's editorial independence under your ownership. How do you respond? Emma sat straighter. First, it's Ms. Carter, and Sentinel's independence is precisely why I'm here. We're launching an investigative series focusing on working Americans' real struggles, stories that need telling regardless of corporate interests. But given your sudden elevation to ownership, my background gives me unique perspective. I've run a small business. I know what everyday Americans face. Sentinel will reflect those realities. The interview continued for 30 minutes. Emma parried questions about her qualifications with specific editorial plans. She highlighted her salon experience as valuable insight into community needs. By afternoon, new crisis erupted. Grant Mercer's leaked accusations reached the House Oversight Committee. Emma read the allegations with growing anger, suggestions of tax irregularities, questions about the transfer's timing. They want internal records going back 5 years. Claire Donovan, Sentinel's counsel, explained. The board is panicking. Emma tried reaching Alex throughout the day. His responses were terse, professional, nothing like their intimate late-night conversations of recent days. By evening, Emma had enough. She arranged to move into a vacant guest flat in the building, smaller but separate from the penthouse. She needed space to think, to plan. At 10 p.m., Alex finally appeared at her door. The board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow, he said without preamble. That's it? No explanation for ghosting me all day? Emma's voice shook. While I defended your company on national television? Our company, legally speaking. His tone was cool. And you handled it well. Stop it. Stop treating me like some corporate asset. You used me, my possible connection to your family, to protect Sentinel. Was anything real? Alex's jaw tightened. The transfer was necessary. The protection is real. Protection? Grant's people are digging through financial records, the Oversight Committee. We'll find nothing irregular. He cut in. Everything was properly executed. That's not the point. You're hiding something. These past days, the intimacy, the trust. Was it all strategy? Something flashed in his eyes, pain, frustration, but his voice remained controlled. What matters is maintaining Sentinel's independence through this crisis. Get out. Emma's words were quiet but firm. I'll handle the board myself tomorrow. He hesitated, then left without another word. Emma spent hours organizing documents, reading financial statements, searching for whatever Alex might be protecting. Her mother's words echoed. True power lies in what you choose to do. Her phone buzzed. Zoe checking in. You okay, Em? No, but I'm done being a pawn. Tomorrow I start gathering my own evidence. She looked around the smaller flat, her chosen space, away from Alex's controlled environment. The clock showed midnight, but sleep felt impossible. She had 48 hours to prepare for whatever came next. Tomorrow she'd start with Eleanor, then dig deeper into Sentinel's records. Alex's distance suggested he was protecting something beyond the company, something in those 5 years of records the Oversight Committee wanted. Emma pulled up Sentinel's digital archive on her laptop. If answers existed, she'd find them herself. The night stretched ahead, full of possibilities and dangers. But for the first time since this began, she felt truly in control of her next move. Thursday morning's headlines hit Emma like physical blows. The New York Times business section showed Alex shaking hands with James Carlton, Grant Mercer's well-known corporate liaison, outside Le Bernardin. The photo captured Alex's trademark boardroom smile, controlled, strategic, empty. Her phone buzzed with notifications. Business outlets speculated wildly. Blackwell-Mercer peace talk, and Sentinel ownership behind-the-scenes deal? Emma's hands shook as she scrolled through social media. Financial bloggers dissected body language, and theorized about backroom negotiations. One tweet cut deepest. Sources say Blackwell Holdings preserves assets while sacrificing Sentinel's editorial independence. He played me, Emma whispered to her empty guest flat. Everything, the intimate moments, the shared vulnerabilities, felt hollow now. At noon, Claire Donovan called. "Emma, the board's releasing a statement about temporary management restructuring." "Without consulting me? I own the company." "Technically, yes, but given recent developments..." Emma ended the call and grabbed her overnight bag. She couldn't stay in this building another minute. Zoe's Brooklyn apartment felt like stepping into another world. The familiar scent of jasmine tea and takeout, the worn couch, the pile of fashion magazines. It grounded her. "You look terrible," Zoe said, pulling her into a hug. "Thanks." Emma managed a weak smile. "Mind if I crash here? Already made up the couch." Zoe studied her face. "Want to talk about it?" Emma sank onto the couch, clutching a throw pillow. I actually thought there was something real beneath his corporate mask. Stupid, right?" "Not stupid. Human." Zoe brought her tea. "But now we plan." They spent Thursday evening mapping out potential allies within Sentinel. Emma had cultivated relationships with key editors during her crash course in media operations. Sarah from the night desk, Marcus in investigative, the young digital team that appreciated her push for human interest stories. Friday morning, the board's announcement dropped. Temporary management restructuring under review. Financial networks spun it as Alex distancing himself from Emma's control. Sentinel's stock price jumped. "He's trying to push me out," Emma said, pacing Zoe's living room. "But why now? What changed?" She pulled up the photo of Alex and James Carlton again. Something felt off about the timing, the publicity of it. Alex was too careful for accidental exposure. "Maybe that's it," she murmured. "It's too perfect." She spent Friday afternoon creating a detailed timeline, the congressional inquiry, Grant's leaked accusations, the carefully photographed meeting, the board's announcement. "It's choreographed," she told Zoe that evening, "but I can't see the full pattern yet." Saturday brought more speculation. Market analysts praised Alex's strategic pivot. Editorial staff whispered about ownership changes. Emma received concerned texts from Eleanor Blackwell. "Be careful. Nothing is what it seems." Emma pulled out her laptop and started a new document. Staff interview questions. She needed to understand the internal dynamics before the leak sources could be traced. She typed, "When did rumors of management changes first circulate? Who had advance knowledge of the board's announcement? What exact language did Alex use in recent staff meetings? Timeline of Grant Mercer's information sources." By Saturday evening, she had compiled a preliminary list of 15 key staff members to interview. Sarah from the night desk topped the list. She saw everything, heard everything. "You're not really sleeping, are you?" Zoe asked around midnight, finding Emma still typing. "Can't." Emma gestured at her notes. "Something bigger is happening. Alex doesn't make public mistakes. That photo was deliberate. The board's announcement was timed. I need to understand why." "And if you find out?" Emma paused. "Then I use it. He taught me about leverage after all." She returned to her document, adding names and questions. Tomorrow she'd begin the interviews. The betrayal still hurt, a constant ache beneath her ribs. But it was fueling something stronger. Determination. Her phone showed another missed call from Alex. Like the others since Thursday, she let it go to voicemail. Whatever game he was playing, she wouldn't be manipulated again. The city lights flickered beyond Zoe's window. Somewhere out there, Alex was probably in his penthouse office, orchestrating his next move. But Emma had learned from him. About power, about patience, about playing the long game. She added a final note to her interview list. Follow the money. The congressional inquiry wanted 5 years of records. The timeline of Grant's accusations matched specific financial quarters. There was a pattern here, hidden in plain sight. Tomorrow she'd start unraveling it, one conversation at a time. But tonight, surrounded by Zoe's familiar clutter and the comfort of real friendship, Emma allowed herself to feel the full weight of these 3 days. The apparent betrayal, the public humiliation, the private pain of realizing intimate moments might have been tactical moves in a larger strategy. She touched her mother's old locket, now containing the mysterious family photo Eleanor had shared. Trust actions, not words, her mother used to say. Alex's actions painted a damning picture, or did they? Emma turned back to her laptop, reviewing her interview strategy. She'd start with Sarah, then work through the editorial team. Someone knew something. Someone had seen the mechanisms behind these synchronized moves. The truth was there, waiting to be uncovered. And Emma had learned enough about power in these past weeks to know that information, carefully gathered, strategically deployed, was the strongest weapon she could wield. Her betrayal could become her advantage. She just had to stay focused, stay smart, and remember everything Alex had inadvertently taught her about corporate chess moves. Tomorrow, the real investigation would begin. But tonight, she kept building her strategy, surrounded by the comfort of Zoe's apartment and the strength of true friendship. Emma arrived at Sentinel's offices early Sunday morning, the security guard raising an eyebrow at her weekend presence. The building felt different on weekends, eerier, more honest somehow. Marcus Hale, a junior financial analyst with wire-rimmed glasses and nervous energy, met her in the data center. "Ms. Carter, I found something in the quarterly reports." Claire Nguyen, whose investigative pieces had won Sentinel-3 awards last year, spread her notes across a conference table. The IP addresses from the leaks trace back to internal servers. Someone inside Sentinel wanted this to look like outside pressure. Emma pulled up her chair. "Show me everything." Marcus projected spreadsheets onto the wall. "See these invoices? They're perfect, too perfect. Someone manufactured a paper trail suggesting board members knew about financial irregularities months ago. But why make the board look complicit?" Emma asked. Claire tapped her notebook. "Because if the board knew and didn't act, they'd be forced to step down during any federal investigation. New board members could be appointed, probably ones friendly to Grant Mercer." They worked through the morning, cross-referencing dates and transactions. Marcus identified subtle patterns in the falsified entries, timestamps that didn't match normal processing hours, authorization codes that looked legitimate but weren't in the master database. Around noon, Eleanor texted, "Check your secure email. Found something in Father's old records." The attachment showed yellowed pages from a trust document dated 25 years ago. Emma's mother's name appeared clearly. Sarah Carter, beneficiary of Discretionary Educational Trust. The amount was substantial, even by today's standards. "This proves there was a connection," Emma murmured. "The Blackwells were protecting my mother back then. And maybe Alex is protecting you now," Claire suggested. "These planted financial records, they're sophisticated. Someone's trying to force a specific outcome." Marcus nodded. "The timing of the congressional inquiry matches exactly when these false entries began appearing. Someone knew it was coming." They ordered lunch in, spreading documents across empty desks. Emma created a timeline. The trust establishment 25 years ago, her mother's later marriage, the recent scandal that forced the marriage arrangement, and now these coordinated attacks. "Look at this," Claire said mid-afternoon. "The IP addresses change patterns on Thursdays, always Thursdays. That's when the finance department runs weekly reconciliation. Someone with deep access." Marcus agreed. They'd need authorization codes, processing schedules, board signatures. Emma's phone buzzed, another text from Alex. She ignored it, focusing on Marcus's screen. There, she pointed. That signature sequence, it's different from the others. They dug deeper. By 6 o'clock, they had identified 37 falsified entries, all traced to Thursday processing windows, all bearing the same subtle signature variation. Eleanor's next text arrived with more historical documents, board minutes from 25 years ago, showing heated debate about Sarah Carter's trust establishment. They were protecting her from something. Eleanor wrote, "Maybe protecting you now too." Claire cross-referenced the old minutes with current board composition. 3 current members were junior executives back then. They'd remember this history. Emma compiled everything into a digital dossier. The false entries, the IP traces, the historical documents. She included Marcus's analysis of signature patterns and Claire's timeline of coordinated leaks. "I'm requesting an emergency board hearing tomorrow," she announced at 8:30. "We present everything." Marcus looked nervous. The person behind this, they're powerful enough to manipulate federal inquiries. Which means they're powerful enough to make mistakes, Claire countered. No one's perfect, especially when they're rushing. They spent the final hour organizing their presentation. Emma arranged the evidence to build gradually. First, the technical proof of internal manipulation, then the historical context suggesting deeper motives. At 9:45, she sent the formal hearing request to the board secretary. Within minutes, confirmation arrived. Monday, 2 p.m., full board attendance required. Claire squeezed her shoulder. "Whatever happens tomorrow, the truth is documented now." Marcus saved multiple copies of their findings to secure servers. "I've encrypted everything. Only you can access it." Emma thanked them both, watching them gather their things. Their loyalty touched her, proof that integrity still existed in corporate halls. Alone in the office, she reviewed everything once more. The trust document kept drawing her eye. Her mother's name in faded ink, the Blackwell family protecting her decades ago. Her phone lit up again. "Alex, meet me Monday. I need to explain." She traced her mother's signature on the old document. Sarah Carter had faced powerful forces back then, too. Had she felt this same mix of determination and uncertainty? The city lights blinked beyond the windows. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, truth, maybe even understanding. But tonight, Emma had done what her mother would have wanted. She'd followed evidence, not assumptions. She'd built allies through respect, not power. She secured the files and gathered her things. In 12 hours, she'd face the board with proof of manipulation and historical ties that suggested deeper loyalties at play. The security guard nodded as she left. "Good night, Ms. Carter." "Good night, James." She stepped into the cool evening air, her mother's locket warm against her skin. The dossier was ready. The hearing was set. Whatever game Alex was playing, whatever forces were moving against Sentinel, tomorrow would bring answers. For now, she had done what her mother taught her: trust actions, follow truth, and never assume the obvious answer was the complete one. The Sentinel boardroom hummed with tension as cameras rolled. Emma stood before the assembled board members, her tablet connected to the room's display screens. Her hands were steady as she opened the first document. "What I'm about to show you proves systematic manipulation of Sentinel's financial records," she began, her voice clear and measured. The cameras tracked her movement as she walked them through the evidence. Screen by screen, she laid out the pattern. Falsified invoices appearing during Thursday processing windows, IP addresses that traced back to specific terminals, digital signatures with subtle inconsistencies that Marcus had identified. These entries were designed to trigger regulatory flags, she explained, highlighting key transactions. They create the appearance of financial impropriety without actually moving money. Board members leaned forward, examining the data. Thomas Richardson, the eldest director, removed his glasses to study a particularly complex series of entries. The pattern suggests inside knowledge of our reconciliation processes, Emma continued. Someone with high-level access coordinated with external parties to plant these records. Claire, sitting in the back, nodded encouragingly as Emma presented their timeline. The historical documents from Eleanor added context. The trust established for Sarah Carter, board minutes showing decades-old connections between the families. Grant Mercer's proxy representatives shifted uncomfortably when Emma displayed communication logs showing coordinated leak timing. The room temperature seemed to drop as implications became clear. These attacks weren't random, Emma stated. They were precisely timed to coincide with regulatory reviews and hostile acquisition attempts. Whispers rippled through the assembled group. Security teams positioned themselves near the doors as tension mounted. Then Alex stood. "What Ms. Carter has uncovered," he said, his voice carrying that familiar controlled power, "is exactly what we anticipated." He nodded to his chief counsel, who distributed sealed folders to each board member. "For the past 3 months, we've been tracking a coordinated attempt to destabilize Sentinel through manufactured financial crisis." Alex continued. "We allowed certain parties to believe their strategy was working." Emma's hands tightened on her tablet. She hadn't known this part. Alex activated his own presentation, revealing surveillance photos, bank transfers, and recorded conversations. Mr. Mercer's organization established shell companies in 3 countries, preparing for a hostile takeover once federal inquiries forced a fire sale. The evidence was damning. Recorded meetings between Grant's representatives and foreign investors, wire transfers through obscured accounts, email chains discussing plans to capitalize on regulatory action. Grant's proxies began texting frantically. 2 stood to leave, but security blocked the exits. "Federal authorities have been briefed," Alex stated. "The SEC and DOJ are moving to freeze relevant accounts and preserve evidence." Emma felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The past weeks, her public humiliation, Alex's apparent betrayal, the board's wavering support, had all been calculated theater to draw out Grant's network. The boardroom erupted into controlled chaos. Legal teams huddled with directors. PR representatives drafted emergency statements. Grant's remaining proxies sat frozen as security collected their phones and devices. Ms. Carter's ownership of Sentinel was never at risk. Alex continued, his eyes meeting hers briefly. The transfer was legally ironclad. By allowing speculation about secret deals, we gave Mr. Mercer's team false confidence to overextend themselves. Emma maintained her composure, but inside she seethed. Alex had used her as bait, letting her believe she'd been betrayed. Yes, his strategy had worked, but at what cost to their personal trust? The next 2 hours passed in a blur of legal statements and procedural votes. The board formally censured Grant's proxies and initiated removal proceedings. Regulatory teams arrived to secure documents and devices. News crews outside reported on the steady stream of law enforcement entering the building. Emma sat quietly, watching the machinery of corporate justice grind into motion. Her evidence had helped expose the truth, but Alex's long game had orchestrated it all. She'd been both right and wrong. There was manipulation, but not where she'd thought. At 6:45, the board officially adjourned. Directors filed out, some pausing to quietly commend Emma's investigation. Security teams escorted Grant's representatives to waiting federal agents. Claire caught Emma's eye from across the room, giving her a supportive nod. They'd uncovered real evidence, even if it fed into Alex's larger strategy. That truth mattered. The cameras finally powered down. PR teams dispersed to manage the media frenzy. Legal teams gathered documents for the overnight work ahead. Emma gathered her materials, hyper-aware of Alex's presence across the room. He'd protected Sentinel, exposed their enemies, and maintained the company's independence. By any corporate measure, it was a masterful victory. But he'd also left her to face public doubt alone, to feel the sting of apparent betrayal, to question everything about their relationship. He'd used her genuine emotions as part of his performance. The boardroom slowly emptied. Outside, news helicopters circled the building as word spread of Grant Mercer's imminent legal troubles. Federal agents continued arriving, their vehicles filling the street below. Emma's phone buzzed with messages from Zoe and her Uncle Frank, responding to the breaking news. She'd have to explain everything to them soon, but first she needed to process what had happened, how truth and deception had woven together, how victory could feel so much like loss. The evidence was secured, Grant's conspiracy exposed, Sentinel's independence protected. But as Emma watched Alex directing legal teams and security personnel, she wondered if some damages couldn't be so easily repaired. She closed her tablet, containing the investigation that had helped spark today's revelations. The truth was out now, but it had come at a price. Trust, once fractured, didn't heal simply because the strategy succeeded. The late afternoon sun slanted through the boardroom windows as teams of lawyers began their overnight work. A new phase was beginning, for Sentinel, for Grant's conspirators, and for whatever remained between Emma and Alex. Tuesday morning's sunlight filtered through the penthouse library's tall windows, casting long shadows across leather-bound volumes. Emma stood near the window, arms crossed, while Alex waited by his desk. "I owe you an explanation," he said, his usual corporate mask softened. "And more than that, an apology. For using me as bait." Emma's voice was steady, controlled. "For not trusting you with the full strategy." Alex loosened his tie slightly, a rare show of discomfort. "Every time I tried to legally shield you, it backfired. Grant's team used each protective measure as evidence of manipulation." Emma moved closer, watching his face. "So you let me believe you'd betrayed me. If you'd known the plan, you would have been legally culpable. Grant's lawyers could have forced you to testify about prior knowledge." He met her gaze directly. "I couldn't risk that." "You could have found another way." "Perhaps." Alex's hand spread on the desk. "Which is why I'm offering more than words now." He pulled out a folder containing merger documents, the planned acquisition of 3 regional media groups that would have consolidated Sentinel's market power. Emma recognized the deal from board discussions. It represented billions in potential revenue. "I'm renouncing the merger," Alex said. "Instead, I'm placing Sentinel's controlling stake in a protective trust." Emma's eyebrows rose. "What kind of trust?" "One co-managed by you and an independent non-profit of your choosing. Full editorial independence, guaranteed by legal framework." She studied him, looking for the catch. "Why?" "Because you were right about power concentration, and because trust has to be earned through action, not words." Over the next 3 days they negotiated terms. Emma insisted on explicit veto rights for editorial appointments. Alex's lawyers drafted language about co-chair authorities. They debated trust structure over late-night sessions, surrounded by legal papers and cooling coffee. "The non-profit partner needs real teeth," Emma argued Wednesday evening. "Not just advisory capacity." Alex nodded, making notes. "We'll add binding consultation requirements for major decisions." Thursday brought final revisions. Emma reviewed every clause, demanding clarity on oversight mechanisms. She'd learned corporate language quickly, wielding it now to ensure the trust had real power. Co-chair isn't just a title, she insisted. I want explicit authority over editorial direction. Agreed. Alex signed the amendment. The market won't like divided control, but it's the right structure. Friday morning arrived with media speculation already brewing. The press room filled early, reporters sensing a major announcement. Emma took the podium first, her blazer crisp, her voice clear. Sentinel's strength lies in its independence, she began, not in market share or profit margins, but in its ability to speak truth without constraint. She outlined the trust structure, explaining how divided authority would protect journalistic integrity. The market analysts in the room shifted uncomfortably, but Emma held her ground. We're choosing sustainable independence over short-term gains, she continued. Building trust through actions, not just words. Alex joined her at the podium, publicly signing the trust documents. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, the powerful CEO voluntarily limiting his own authority. By Saturday, market analysis showed surprising support. Sentinel stock dipped initially but stabilized as institutional investors praised the governance model. Editorial staff sent messages of support, celebrating the guaranteed independence. That evening, Alex invited Emma to the penthouse terrace. The city lights sparkled below, a warm breeze stirring the potted plants. I have one more thing to offer, he said quietly. Not a legal document this time. Emma waited, watching his usual corporate mask slip further. A personal commitment, he continued. Equal partners in every sense. No more power plays or unilateral decisions. That's a significant shift for you, Emma observed. Yes. His smile was slight but genuine. I'm learning that control isn't always strength. She moved closer, studying his face. And if I challenge your decisions? I expect nothing less. His hand found hers. That's what partners do. Their kiss was different this time. No power dynamics, no hidden agendas. Just two people choosing each other as equals. When they moved inside, every touch was negotiated, every boundary respected. Later, lying in the quiet darkness, they began planning long-term strategy. Emma outlined ideas for expanding investigative coverage. Alex suggested structural changes to protect reporters. The board will push back, he warned. Let them. Emma's voice was confident. We have the legal framework now. And each other, Alex added softly. She squeezed his hand, remembering the fierce, closed-off man from their first meeting. He'd changed. They both had. The forced marriage had evolved into something real, built on hard-won trust and mutual respect. Sunday brought more practical discussions. They drafted editorial guidelines, reviewed budget allocations, and planned board presentations. But underlying the business talk was a new understanding, equal partners facing challenges together. The weekend ended with them on the terrace again, sharing quiet moments between strategy sessions. The trust documents lay signed on Alex's desk, the merger papers officially withdrawn. Their public roles were set, their professional partnership defined. But here, in private moments, they were simply two people who'd found unexpected connection through conflict, who'd learned that true partnership meant supporting each other's strength, not demanding submission. The city hummed below, news cycles turned, and somewhere Grant's lawyers were preparing defenses. But on the terrace, Emma and Alex had found their balance, not in power over each other, but in power shared. The renovated Sentinel newsroom gleamed under September sunlight. Floor-to-ceiling windows replaced the old corporate barriers, letting natural light flood the workspace. Emma stood at the podium, her tailored suit a far cry from the salon apron she'd worn a year ago. The Carter Trust for Vocational Opportunity, she announced. We'll provide training and mentorship to young entrepreneurs from underserved communities. Her voice carried confidence now, earned through battles won and lessons learned. Starting with a focus on small business owners and expanding to include journalism fellowships. The crowd included familiar faces, Zoe beaming from the front row, Eleanor Blackwell nodding approvingly, Alex watching from stage left with quiet pride. The morning's headlines had announced Grant Mercer's federal indictment on multiple counts of financial fraud and attempted market manipulation. This initiative, Emma continued, represents our commitment to both independence and responsibility. The Trust will operate separately from Sentinel's editorial operations, but share our core mission, empowering voices that deserve to be heard. She caught Alex's eye briefly. Their partnership had evolved from forced arrangement to genuine collaboration, each bringing different strengths to their shared vision. Eleanor took the podium next, her usual reserve softened. The Blackwell family, she began, has not always chosen wisely between power and principle. Today marks a correction of past mistakes. She glanced at Emma. Sometimes it takes new perspectives to show us better paths. By 11, the formal ceremonies concluded. Emma moved through the newsroom, meeting with young reporters and interns. She stopped at a desk where a junior writer struggled with a draft. Remember, Emma advised, start with the human story. The data supports it, but people connect with people. The same insight that had helped her understand salon clients now shaped Sentinel's editorial voice. From the executive balcony, Alex watched her work. His public persona remained controlled, but those who knew him saw the changes. He delegated more, listened better, and had learned to share both power and vulnerability. The afternoon brought operational meetings, Emma and Alex reviewing quarterly plans as equals. They debated strategy but found common ground more easily now, their different perspectives strengthening decisions rather than creating conflict. The board's quarterly review? Alex asked. Already prepared. Emma pulled up presentation slides. We're showing strong growth in digital subscriptions and community engagement. At 7:30, their closest circle gathered in the penthouse. The space had changed too. Warmer colors, personal touches, signs of shared life rather than just corporate power. Zoe arranged flowers while Eleanor helped set up. The city skyline provided a backdrop as Emma and Alex faced each other. No cameras or legal requirements this time. A year ago, Alex began, his voice softer than his boardroom tone. I thought I was protecting an empire. Instead, I found a partner who showed me better ways to lead. He took Emma's hands. You challenge me, support me, and make me want to be worthy of the trust you've given. Emma smiled, remembering their first tense meeting. I came here angry and afraid, determined to fight against control. What I found was a partnership worth fighting for. She squeezed his hands. You learned to share power. I learned to accept support. We're stronger together than either of us alone. They exchanged simple bands, symbolic rather than legal, chosen rather than required. Zoe wiped tears. Eleanor actually smiled. The celebration was intimate, conversations flowing easily between business and personal topics. Emma's uncle Frank, now running a successful small business with trust support, shared stories about her childhood determination. Near midnight, Emma and Alex returned to the newsroom. The space was quiet except for distant printing presses. Emma sat at a desk, fingers moving across keys as she drafted an editorial. Power and responsibility. Alex read over her shoulder. Appropriate topic. I'm thinking about that first day, Emma said. How scared and angry I felt. How far we've come. Alex pulled up a chair beside her. We both had to change. Learn to trust. Emma typed another line about leadership and listening. The trust structure is working better than expected. Readership up, staff morale strong. Because you brought humanity to the numbers. Alex reviewed research data on his tablet. The vocational program's first-class graduates next month. They worked in silence, occasionally sharing observations or suggestions. This was their new normal, partners in work and life, choosing each other daily through actions small and large. The editorial took shape, exploring how true leadership meant empowering others rather than controlling them. Emma wove in examples from their year of transformation, showing how divided authority had strengthened rather than weakened Sentinel. "Remember the first board meeting?" Emma asked, pausing to stretch. "You surprised them all." Alex smiled slightly. "Still do, regularly. We've built something good here." She gestured at the newsroom. "Not just the business, the mission, the impact. Better than I imagined when I was focused only on maintaining control." Emma saved her draft and turned to him. "Partnership suits you. You suit me." His hand found hers. "In every way." The city hummed below. Headlines were being set for morning papers, and somewhere their lawyers were probably drafting new proposals. But in this quiet moment, they were simply Emma and Alex, partners who had found their way from forced arrangement to chosen commitment. The editorial waited for morning edits. They had board meetings to prepare for, trust initiatives to manage, and endless decisions to navigate together. But they'd learned to balance power with partnership, strength with vulnerability, independence with support. Emma's desk still held a small bottle of lavender oil, reminding her of where she'd started. Alex's fountain pen sat beside it. Their worlds merged rather than one erasing the other. They'd built something neither could have created alone, a partnership of equals, chosen daily and proven through actions. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.